The ice did not care who won the war. It swallowed human blood and krill ichor with the same indifference, crystallizing both into jagged scarlet flowers beneath Nythra's pale sun. For 3 standard cycles, the ceasefire had held, a brittle truce brokered by exhaustion, not mercy. Soldiers on both sides huddled in glacial trenches, their breath sinking to the planet's eerie song, the groan of shifting shelves, the hiss of methane geysers vomiting ancient air. But Nythra's silence was the loudest sound. It thickened the dark between patrols, where frost crept into rifle barrels and nightmares festered. The humans called it a resource war. The krill named it Vaith's cleansing, a sacrament to cull weakness. Both sides lied. Beneath the permafrost, kilometers below the artillery-scarred plains, something older than their feud slept in a vault of black alloy. The lab's creators had left no insignia, only a single canister stamped with coordinates to dead worlds. Inside, a liquid silver as sinuous as a living thing pressed against its glass, whispering to those who dared listen. They called it cryospsis in the classified briefings, a title sterile enough to sanitize its purpose. The scientists who discovered it argued over its origin, a relic of Nythra's lost natives or a plague discarded by some vagrant starfaring race. The generals did not care. They saw only the reports, DNA unspooled in its presence, cells devoured from within, a weapon to end wars, a weapon to end species. When the orbital strike shattered the ceasefire, it cracked the vault's seals, too. Above ground, soldiers scrambled through collapsing ice, enemies and allies indistinguishable in the chaos. Below, the canister's surface rippled, as if stirred by a breath no living thing could perceive. Nythra's war was never about geothermal riches. It was about who would blink first when godhood thawed. Chapter 1. The cold did not bite, it devoured. Kalan Vasik's breath crystallized the moment it left his lips, the air so jellied it stole sound, leaving only the creak of his thermal suit's joints as he crawled over Nythra's glassine crust. Behind him, the trenchline smoldered, blackened craters where the orbital strike had fallen minutes ago, violating the ceasefire. His HUD flickered, radiation levels spiking. Frost veiled the visor, but he dared not wipe it. Movement attracted drones. He remembered the way the ice had screamed. Not a metaphor, Nythra's permafrost layers sang when fractured, methane trapped for millennia escaping in ultrasonic shrieks. The sound had preceded the collapse, the shelf splintering beneath the outpost, swallowing humans and krill alike. Now only wind answered, a hollow psalm. A shadow shifted in the jagged maw of the crevasse below, not human. The silhouette was all wrong, elongated limbs, a carapace glinting beetle black under the weak starlight. Krill, alive. Kalan's gloved hand hovered over his holstered pulse pistol. He had not fired it in 9 months, not since the siege of Vaith, where he had watched his own toxin peel the chitin from living soldiers. He counted the tremors in his fingers, 3, before withdrawing his hand. The krill moved with predatory grace, claws scoring the ice as it ascended. No helmet. The Dominion's warriors rarely wore them, their exoskeletons sealed against the void. This one's thorax was scarred, one antenna snapped. Female, he guessed, noting the tapered abdominal plating. She paused, head tilted, and he realized she was listening to the ice, to him. He did not see the second fissure until it yawned beneath his boots. The collapse was soundless, vertiginous. He fell through cobalt darkness, the world reduced to the hiss of his suit's pressure alert. Impact, pain spiderwebbed through his ribs. When he opened his eyes, the krill stood over him, a blade of honed bone extruded from her forearm. Her mandibles twitched, emitting a subvocal hum that made his molars ache. "You will stand," the translator implanted in her thorax wheezed, rendering her clicks into guttural anguish. He noted the fractures in her carapace, the mercury-dark fluid weeping down her leg. Injured, alone, like him. The chamber they had fallen into was not natural. Smooth walls curved upward, etched with the hive glyphs of the krill. a buried lab, its power core faintly thrumming. She pressed a claw to a terminal, glyphs flaring amber. Lights awakened in staggered rows, revealing vaults of frozen biomass, krill embryos, their tendril limbs suspended in gel. Her head jerked, a staccato motion. Surprise. He rose slowly, hands visible. You did not know this was here. The blade retracted. She studied a console, claws tapping. This facility was purged, decommissioned after the infestation. The translator mangled the last word into static. He approached, boots slipping on frost. The screens displayed DNA spirals, mutation rates, human, krill, hybrids. His stomach clenched. He knew the curves of those base pairs, the way the helices frayed at the 7th codon, his design. Cryospsis, the word escaped like a confession. She turned, her compound eyes reflecting his face 100 times. You are the architect. Not a question, he wondered if she would kill him now. Instead, she gestured to a cryovault where a canister pulsed with viscous silver. They told us it was a cleansing, a purgative for your weakness. The blade emerged again, but she drove it into the console, sparks cascading. Lies, this would unmake us all. Wind moaned through the chamber. Somewhere above, the ice shifted, a cathedral collapsing in slow motion. She seized his arm, claws piercing his suit's lining. You will help me destroy it. He did not ask why. He saw it in the tremor of her antenna, the same revulsion that had driven him to bury his research under 12 layers of encryption, the same fear. They did not speak again until the tremors began. Chapter 2. The geothermal vents sang as they descended, a low threnody of shifting stone and pressurized steam. Kalen counted the rhythms, 3 seconds between tremors, 5 between geysers, predictable, controllable. He focused on these numbers to avoid dwelling on the silver canister in his pack, its weight a lodestone against his spine. Cryospsis. Saria had insisted on bringing it, though she would not say why. Her silence was a blade between them. She moved ahead, her carapace glistening under Nythra's pallid dawn. The injury on her leg had stopped weeping mercury, but she favored her left side, claws scoring the ice for balance. He noted the pattern, 3 steps, a pause to scent the air, antennae quivering, hunting, not for threats, he realized, but for the lie in her own actions. She had disobeyed her hive. He wondered if that betrayal had a taste, a sound, if it gnawed at her as his own regrets gnawed at him. They found the cave system by accident. A drone strike collapsed the eastern glacier, revealing veins of obsidian rock. Saria hesitated at the entrance, her breath condensing into frost-shrouded clicks. This is a nesting site, abandoned. The translator mangled the last word into something like forgotten. Inside, the walls throbbed with residual heat. Krill hieroglyphs spiraled across the stone, older than any he had seen. Swarm sigils eroded into ambiguity. Saria traced them, her claws leaving fresh grooves. They honored their dead here, before the war, before the modifications. She did not meet his gaze. The Dominion had rewritten her people, stripping their history along with their empathy. He thought of his own laboratories, the way he had snipped genes like wire, and wondered what the word modification excused. Nightfall brought a clarity to the cold. The cave's warmth was an illusion, their breath still hung spectral in the air. Kalen activated his last heat beacon, its orange glow painting Saria in fractured shadows. She crouched at the cavern's edge, dissecting a skittering ice mite with surgical precision. Fuel. Her pragmatism should have repelled him. Instead, he found it familiar, a kinship of function. You are staring. She did not look up. You do not eat. He gestured to the mite's discarded carapace. My metabolism requires protein every 72 hours. You require it every 12. Weakness. She flung the meat at his feet, a kindness harshly offered. He roasted it over the beacon, the smell acrid. Why keep the weapon? You know what it does. Her antennae stiffened. You assume I intend to use it. You assume I intend to destroy it. A tremor passed through her, nearly imperceptible. The cave shuddered in sympathy, ice fracturing somewhere in the dark. When she spoke again, her voice was a broken frequency. I have seen the hive simulations. Cryospsis deployed on your colonies, on ours. It is not clean. He had never heard a krill struggle for words. No bioweapon is. You misunderstand. It learns, rewrites itself, your design. His design, always his. He saw it then, the spirals of cryospsis code in her mind, its hunger. You cannot contain it. No, but you can. The admission hung between them, colder than the void. She believed him capable of atonement. It was worse than hatred. Dawn breached the cave with knives of light. They pressed onward, the canister's weight shared between them now. Saria froze at the ridge's crest, her whole body resonant with subvocal alarm. Below, the ice flats swarmed with figures, krill scouts, their carapaces sheathed in stealth film, hunting her. She pushed him into a crevasse, her body a shield. They will have tracers, my implant. A spasm cut her words short, black fluid leaking from her auditory vents, the hive reasserting control. He acted without thought, wrenched the thermal grenade from his belt, primed it, and hurled it into a sulfur deposit. The explosion was a sun, blinding, the avalanche that followed a roar of raw physics. He pulled her into the frozen dark as the world collapsed. She woke fevered, her exoskeleton scorched, overheating, a krill's fatal flaw. He packed her in ice, hands steady, mind a tempest. She watched him, compound eyes dim. You should have fled. You would not have. A truth too vast to hold. They sheltered in the corpse of a downed warship, its hull petrified by frost. Saria's implant hissed static, broadcasting her location. She clawed at her thorax, drawing black blood. Remove it. He had no tools, no anesthesia, only a vibroblade and the desperation of a man who had once thought himself a god. The surgery was crude, a mutilation. She did not scream, but her mandibles locked around his forearm, not biting, not quite. When it ended, she lay trembling, her systems rebooting. Why? The word was a rasp, human in its frailty. He showed her the extracted implant, its tendrils still writhing. You are more than your hive. She laughed, a sound like grinding glass. And you are more than your guilt. The truce deepened, days blurred into rituals, melting ice for water, scanning the horizon for scouts, avoiding the canister's gaze. They spoke little. Words were perilous, edged things. The transmission came at dusk, a human frequency encrypted. Kaelan's hands shook as he decoded it. Fleet coordinates, attack vectors, both sides converging on Nythra, drawn by the bioweapon's whisper. Saria studied the data, her new scars raw. They will turn this planet to ash. He thought of cryospsis, buried now beneath the avalanche, a temporary reprieve. We could end it, use the weapon before they arrive. Her claw closed over his wrist, a question. He shook his head, but we will not. No, she released him, the ghost of a smile in her click speech. We will not. They armed the charges in silence. Chapter 3. The lab's walls wept. Condensation dripped from fractured cryochambers, the sterile chill of Nythra's underbelly giving way to a cloying humidity as the geothermal reactors groaned under duress. Kaelan Vosik pressed his palm against a shuddering terminal, the holographic schematics of cryospsis flickering like a dying star. His reflection wavered in the screen, a gaunt specter with hollows where conviction once resided. The bioweapons canister lay bolted to the chamber floor, its silver surface rippling as if alive, a sentient mercury that whispered of his hubris. Saria Joreth stood at the vault's threshold, her carapace glistening under the emergency light's jaundiced glow. She had not spoken since they entered the lab, her silence a blade honed by the weight of impending betrayal. Her remaining antenna trembled faintly, attuned to the hive's dormant frequencies, a ghost limb still twitching with phantom commands. Kalen watched her claws flex, retract, flex again, a metronome of restraint. "You will hesitate," he thought, "and that will be enough." The floor quaked, ice platelets shearing from the ceiling in daggered shards. Above them, the war had reignited. Orbital strikes pounded the glaciers like primordial drums, each detonation a reminder that time coiled like a serpent, ready to strike. He traced the reactor's overload sequence on the terminal, fingers numb. To bury cryospsis, he would need to liquefy the lab's foundation, sink it into Nythra's molten mantle. A elegant solution, a funeral pyre. "You are certain," Saria's translator emitted a warped baritone, the krill tongue's clicks distorted by damage. She did not face him. Her focus remained on the lab's entrance, where shadows pooled thick as oil. "Certainty is a luxury." His breath fogged the screen. "The reactors are unstable. The meltdown will erase everything within 2 kilometers, including us if we linger." A subsonic rumble vibrated through her thorax, disapproval, amusement, he could not tell. The nuances of her language had always eluded him, a labyrinth of frequencies and pressure shifts. She stepped toward the canister, her claws leaving glyph-like grooves in the frost. "The hive will excavate it. They will send drones, then armies. This is a delay, not a defeat." "Delay is all we have." Her compound eyes caught the light, fracturing her gaze into 100 shards. "You have not asked why I stayed." He had 1,000 times in the hollows between survival and exhaustion. She had fled her kin, severed her implant, fought alongside a man whose people she was engineered to despise. Yet here she stood, a monument to contradictions. "You would not answer." "No," her claw hovered over the canister's release valve. "But you will watch." The vault seals hissed, hydraulics screaming as the canister rose. Cryospsis swirled inside, its surface undulating with pseudopod tendrils, an abomination that defied taxonomy. Part pathogen, part machine, wholly his. Kalen's pulse thrummed in his temples. He had crafted its first iteration to target krill chitin, a humane killer. The Dominion had refined it into something that gnawed at DNA itself, a feral thing that left nothing but ash in its wake. Saria's talon tapped the canister. A single droplet of mercury blood fell, absorbed by the silver shell. They called it purification, a sacrament. Her translator spat static. "But it is only hunger, like them, like you." "Like us," he corrected. The reactor's alarm blared, crimson lights painting her exoskeleton in arterial hues. She turned, the air between them charged with ozone and unsaid words. "You wish to atone, to die here with your creation. It is sentimental." "And you," he stepped closer, the canister's cold radiating through his suit. "What do you wish?" Her mandibles flexed, a gesture he had learned signaled conflict, to prove the hive wrong. The admission hung fragile. For all her ferocity, she was still a creature of validation, desperate to transcend her programming. He reached for her claw, stopping short. Touch was a language they had not learned. "Then help me end this." A tremor shook the chamber, ice cascading. Somewhere, metal screamed. They worked in tandem, Kalen overriding the reactor's safeties, Saria rigging plasma charges along the lab's support columns. The air grew thick, acrid, each breath a labor. He counted the seconds between klaxons, a futile attempt to impose order on chaos. She moved with mechanical precision, her injuries forgotten, every action a rebuke to the hive's expectations. When the first explosion rocked the lab, she was at his side. Ceiling panels buckled, disgorging a deluge of ice melt and debris. Saria shoved him behind a console, her body a shield. Chitin cracked under the barrage, black fluid slicking the floor. He shouted her name, the word raw, unfamiliar. She did not react, her focus on the reactor's core, a pulsing orb of blue flame. "The charges will not hold," she rasped. "You must detonate them manually." He stared at the detonator in her claw, the blast radius. "I will follow," a lie poorly told. The lab dissolved around them, a cacophony of rending steel and splintering ice. Kalen gripped the detonator, his mind bifurcating, scientist and soldier, coward and savant. Saria seized his wrist, her claw piercing flesh. "Go, or everything is wasted." He ran. The central shaft was a tomb, its ladder rungs glazed with frost. He climbed, the detonator's weight a lodestone. Below, Saria battled the collapse, her claws shearing through falling debris. A strut gave way, crushing her leg. She roared, a sound that transcended language, and hurled a chunk of machinery into the reactor's core. Light blinded him, heat followed, a dragon's breath. He pressed the detonator. Silence. Then a chain of detonations, the world upended. He awoke in a white hell. Nythra's surface had become a fractured mirror, glacial plains splintered into prismatic shards. The lab's ruins smoldered below, a blackened maw. Blood crusted his lips, his suit's joints frozen. He did not rise. Let the cold take him. Let it be done. A shadow blotted the stars. Saria dragged herself from the ruins, her carapace a mosaic of fissures, one wing sheared to the root. She collapsed beside him, mercury pooling beneath her. Her remaining antenna brushed his cheek, a gesture absurdly gentle. "You did not flee." He laughed, the sound devoured by the wind. "Neither did you." Her claw found his hand, the grip weak. "The hive was wrong, we are more." The kiss was an accident or an inevitability. Her mandibles grazed his lips, cold and sharp, a sensation that lingered long after she pulled away. Survival demanded movement. They stood, leaning into one another, a three-legged creature staggering toward the horizon. They did not look back. Epilogue. War like ice abides. Fleets clashed above Nythra, their firestorms refracted through the atmosphere into auroras of carnage. But in the glacier's heart, a new signal blazed, coordinates broadcast on krill and human frequencies, a rallying cry stripped of allegiance. Defectors came, human soldiers with hollow eyes, krill warriors bearing scarred-off hive sigils. They gathered in the shadow of a warship's carcass, their loyalty a fragile alloy forged by shared disgust. Kalan and Saria led them, not as commanders but as symbols. The man who burned his legacy, the sentinel who defied her gods. Together they navigated the ice, a mosaic of scars and silences. At night, when the auroras writhed, she would press her brow to his, a krill gesture he did not understand but reciprocated. No words, none were needed. The war would outlive them, but here, in the frozen interstices, they were neither heroes nor villains. They were possibility.